We had today our speaker CS Payal Kataria ji from New Delhi, and also she had invited and given us a pleasure to invite Avinash sir. He is a retired commissioner of Customs, Central Excise and GST. So before starting the deliberation, I request CA Deepak Mandecha, Deputy Conveyor, to kindly introduce the today guest faculty, Avinash Pushkarna ji. Deepak,
Thank you,
over to
Amish.
you.
Yes, thank you, Amish, and good evening, everyone. Now it gives me immense pleasure to give the introduction of Avinash Pushkarnaji, a renowned personality. Means I was just going through his introduction, and I'm deeply motivated, and I've just come to this conclusion that you have to be passionate about something, and you have to give your 100% in order to achieve that passion. So now I will describe his brief journey of Avinash ji now. Now he did his graduation in zoology honors and later a degree in law from Delhi University. Now Avinash ji Pushkarna ji then joined the State Bank of India as a
बोलू
probationary
कि नहीं
officer
रहे जो बोल
in 1983. Now, but his passion was to be a civil servant, and that made him join the government of India in 1986 as a customs appraising officer. And in 1997, he was inducted into the Indian Revenue Service. He has put in more than 37 years of active service and has recently retired as Commissioner of Customs, Central Excise, and GST. Now he has received World Customs Organization's Certificate of Merit for his distinguished service in 2014. He has also received Presidential Award of Appreciation Certificate for specially distinguished record of service in 2019. He's a fitness freak. Besides, he loves singing and music. A passionate and a voracious reader, Avinashji aspires to be an author of repute. For this, he debuted with his own novel, and that was named as My Red Butterfly, a romantic fiction set in late 70s and early 80s, was published by Neogi Books, Delhi in 2016. सो आई हैव कम टू अ कंक्लूजन दैट काम के साथ साथ में मीन्स हर एक इंसान को अपने पैशन को भी जीना चाहिए. सर ने बहुत कुछ अचीव किया है. ही हैज अचीव्ड इन हिज प्रोफेशनल लाइफ, इन हिज पर्सनल लाइफ, एंड ही हैज अचीव्ड एवरीथिंग. सर, वी ऑल आर eagerly waiting to to listen from you and your deliberation, sir. And and like I and like I have told you that your introduction has motivated me a lot, and I would like to thank you, Payalji, also that you have persuaded Avinash ji to come today and address our members. So thank you very much, Payalji, also. And sir, we are eagerly waiting from you to hear from you, sir. Thank you very much. Over to you, Avinash ji.
One minute, one minute. Before starting, Avinash sir, I request CA Radhesham Falud ji to kindly introduce the today's speaker, CS Payal Kataria ji. Over to you, Radhesham ji.
Thanks, Amit, for giving me an opportunity to introduce our speaker for today, C.S. Payal Kataria. C.S. Payal Kataria, fellow member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India with post-graduation in commerce, having 10 years experience as practicing company secretary in Delhi NCR. She provides advisory services to organizations on goods and services tax and also advises industry in adopting digital technologies in operation for visibility and decision making. She contributed in a capacity as a special invitee of GST Core Committee of ICSI in the year 2017 and 2018. Presently, member of Advanced Tax Law Expert Committee of ICSI 2020. She is playing instrumental role in building awareness on GST. Her popular Kavita on GST title GST Ka Vada express her positive outlook towards GST, and ICSI proudly published her Kavita in ICSI GST newsletter. With this brief introduction, I welcome her to today's webinar. उसके पहले एक मैं छोटा सा जोक सुनाना चाहूंगा जीएसटी के ऊपर। तिवारी जी के यहाँ बेटा पैदा हुआ, उसका नाम रखा गया जीएसटी यानी गौरी शंकर तिवारी। बड़े होने पर लोग कहेंगे HGST यानी श्री गौरी शंकर तिवारी। उसके शादी के इनविटेशन कार्ड पर उनका नाम छपेगा CGST यानी चिरंजीवी गौरी शंकर तिवारी। दिल्ली से जब वो बॉम्बे आएंगे तो वहां IGST लगेगा यानी इंडिया के गौरी शंकर तिवारी। नाउ ओवर टू CS पायल कटारिया।
So first, I would like to request Avinash ji to first address his deliberation.
First, I'm sorry. Avinash ji.
Avinash ji, unmute yourself.
Avinash sir, please unmute yourself. We are unable to hear you.
कौन बोलेगा पहले?
Am I audible now? Am I audible now?
Yes.
Very warm good evening to all of you. And it is my real privilege and honor to be part of this August forum and present before this elite glitterati of chartered accountants who I would say, even though my resume has been read and I have been told that I'm an illustrious person, but I feel I appear very humble before such elite gathering. And it is my humble attempt today to present a kind of GST vision, as Madam Payal Kataria told me. So I don't have much time. I'll just delve on the historical approach and leading to, because in my past posting, I had been Commissioner Audit in Meerut. So I have that experience, and I feel audit perspective is very important for the chartered accountants and also for the suppliers and traders in GST. So I'll straight away proceed to my PPT. And before that, because what is my main passion, as Deepak has just elaborated, is that I want to become an author of repute. And this is a glimpse of my book. This is My Red Butterfly, which I had passionately written for 7 years, and ultimately it could see the light of day on in December 2016. And in fact, I'm working on my next novel also. Thank you. I'll just begin with a PowerPoint presentation because I don't have much time. Now, I'll just come straight away to the historical perspective. As you all know, you are all chartered accountants and you are very
Your
much...
screen is not shared. Your screen is not shared. Kindly share your screen again.
Just one moment, please.
Sir, Zoom is visible. PPT is not visible. Yeah, it's
Now
visible now.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is GST vision, and I'll just go straight with the historical perspective of the whole thing, even though all of you are chartered accountants, so you are very well versed with this thing, but I felt that this is little important because the GST per se is a path-breaking tax reform which has been customized specifically for a federal polity and country like India, because India, as you know, has the federal polity where states as well as center have been enjoying vast powers of legislation as regards taxation matters. And our whole system of GST is based on the Canadian model. And let me share with you that in the Canadian model, unlike India, even though in India we have been able to implement this tax reform throughout the country, but in Canada, even till now, certain countries have not yet participated, and certain states have not participated in this tax reform. So therefore, it is not applicable to those very states of Canada, but in other areas it is. But unlike that, even though we adopted the Canadian model, but we have been able to implement this path-breaking reform throughout India. And the genesis of this reform lies in the Kilker Task Force, which had been set up way back in 2005 on that fiscal responsibility and budget management. And basically the mandate of the task force was for preparing a blueprint for introduction of a comprehensive tax on all goods and services, replacing central level VAT and state level VATs. It recommended replacing all indirect taxes except the custom duty with value-added tax on all goods and services with complete set-off in all stages of making of product. All of you might be familiar with the its predecessor, that is MODVAT and SENVAT. MODVAT was introduced way back in 2000, in 1985, and later on there was SENVAT also, but they were not having the complete set of system because it was not applicable to all the formats. But now with this GST, we have subsumed all the central taxes as well as state taxes to a large state levies to a large extent into this GST. So now we have one common market, there is one common rate, and this is a common procedure applicable everywhere. Now, a very important thing is that GST, unlike in the previous regime where we had the central sales tax, which was applicable between interstate trade, that was origin based, means from the state which it arose, there the tax was being levied and appropriated. But now it is a destination based consumption tax, and the tax accrues to the destination place where consumption of goods or services takes place. And GST, since its formulation and what it had been conceived and conceptualized in the past, I think to a large extent, despite or in spite of the initial bottlenecks or the teething problems, it has still survived. Now we have recently celebrated in July 3 full years of its effective implementation, which has resulted in higher levies and compliance also. Now it is a game changer. What was initially envisaged was that by subsuming the major central and state taxes in the GST, a complete and comprehensive setup of input goods and services in the supply chain, coupled with the uniformity of tax rates and procedure across India, there will be reduction in the cost of locally manufactured goods and services, which will increase their cost competitiveness in the international market, and it will give boost to the Indian exports. And I would say, through my experience in the department, that to a large extent, this objective has been achieved.
So you can just press Shift F5 on your PC, so you'll get the screenshot.
Yeah.
Shift F5. Yeah.
So apart from that, exporters, it has also given benefit to small traders and entrepreneurs. And I must say that you all would agree that the threshold limit for registration under GST is quite liberal. And right now, for an annual turnover of say around 20 lakhs, in case of supplier of services, and 10 lakhs in certain cases like certain northeastern states, there it is 10 lakhs. And as regards the goods, it is 40 lakhs and 20 lakhs in case of supplier of goods in the northeastern states or certain other states like Uttarakhand or Telangana. So this is a kind of very liberal approach for laying down a threshold limit for GST registration. And unlike multiple registration, which you all know earlier with the traders or the manufacturer or the supplier, you had to undertake under different tax regimes. Now you have got a single registration on which Madam Payal is going to delve deeper in the subsequent lecture. And then apart from this, there's a composition scheme which has been provided for businesses with aggregate annual turnover of around 1.5 crore. And it is 75 lakhs in certain cases, depending on, as I mentioned earlier, certain northeastern states. And it is 50 lakhs in case of supplier of services, 75 lakhs in case of goods, and 50 lakhs in case of supplier of services. So I'm sorry, I'm going too faster because I don't have much time, and moreover, I know that you are quite fully conversant, but I just wanted to set the tempo and get the background. Apart from that, it is also going to give benefit, it has already given to the agriculture as well as industry. It has given relief to the industry, trade and agriculture through a more comprehensive and wider coverage of input tax set-off and service tax set-off in a transparent chain. Now you see here the whole chain which is moving, in which all the various players are working. It is very transparent. It is having a backbone of systems. There's a GST portal, and our DG system is monitoring the same and also trying to remove as and when required the glitches and snafus in the system. And the transparent chain, that it is leading to widening of tax base and better tax compliance. Now everything is so transparent. If tomorrow I press a button, I can come to know straight away that what are the tax collections on hourly basis, also on daily basis, on monthly basis, what are the tax collections, and accordingly government can go for the required intervention measures. So this has resulted in lowering of taxes, tax burden on an average dealer in the industry, trade as well as agriculture. Apart from that, I'm just repeating, it is again extension of the same thing, that it has also brought a lot of relief to the common consumers. The continuous chain of setup from producer's point to the retailer's point for reduction of border tax on goods under GST, it is consequently benefiting the consumers. And then above all, as our Prime Minister has conceptualized, and he has been trying with his untiring efforts to promote Make in India. We can say Atmanirbhar Bharat. We want to have that kind of thing. And you see, if the system of taxes is having glitches, the traders and the manufacturers, the suppliers, they face problems. Naturally, we cannot move forward. And now, when our country is globalized, when we are seeking international investments, for such a scenario, we have to have a good GST regime. And that is what I feel it has achieved. So in the process, it is going to benefit the Make in India campaign. We are now, I'm repeating, we are having a uniform common market, uniform laws and procedures throughout the country to boost foreign investment, giving a fillip to the Make in India campaign. As there is no cascading of taxes. Earlier there was cascading of taxes was there. Multiplier, taxes on taxes, but now there is no cascading of taxes. So as there is no cascading of taxes, the products are becoming cheaper, causing increase in aggregate demand and manufacturing activity, thereby generating more employment and increase in GDP, with gainful employment leading to substantive economic growth. So this is what the historical background with which GST was started, and now it has come completed full 3 years, 3.5 years, you can say now. And what are the objectives there which were set so ambitiously, and now what objective it has achieved. So this is the background on that thing. Apart from that, this has also resulted in ease of doing business. Now you have got a very simple tax regime with fewer exemptions. I remember earlier in the central excise regime, there were plethora of exemptions, high taxes, but then this exemption, small scale, this scale, that scale. Now all those exemptions have been removed. There is a simplified tax regime. There is reduction in multiplicity of taxes, reduction in compliance costs also. Now of course, no doubt it takes time for the public also to get educated, and our systems, power, and internet, all these things are no doubt important. But I think we have evolved to a large extent 3 years back, and what we are now here, and it has resulted in reduction in compliance cost. And we, apart from that, we have got a common tax base now. You see, the same SSC is not available for the central as well as state. We have got a common tax base. And then this is simplified and automated, as I mentioned earlier. It is simplified and automated common procedures for registration, returns, refunds, and tax payments through a common GST portal in a uniform form. That is the biggest achievement in our taxation so far in this so many years of our independence and having this kind of tax administration. I think this was never there earlier. You all would agree. I'll repeat again, a simplified and automated common procedures for registration, returns, refunds, tax payments, and we have got a common GST and portal in a uniform format. Then naturally it has resulted in improved compliance as all returns are filed online, input credits are verified online, encouraging more paper trail of transactions also. That means if government also wants, it can keep a trail, as well as the party also would be having a trail as to from where the goods are coming. Everything can be calculated online, like for which earlier they had to go through tomes and tomes of ledgers, and there are many individuals and many forums are coming forward and creating. I'll just quote Madam Payal Kataria here, who has devised that Pakka Bill kind of system. It is such a beautiful program she has devised. And it could be done and it can be operated because now everything is on a GST portal. You can interact with that system straight away. So it is encouraging more paper trade with the transaction, which is for the benefit of the government as well as for the trade. Now here comes the question, then who are the, now when we have this thing, I find that the registration on which the next lecture is going to be is very, very important. You cannot take any refund. Government will not come to know, government cannot collect any tax unless people are registered. So that is what the government had tried in the past. that all the service tax migrants, all the centralized migrants, all the VAT SSCs, they were all migrated to this new system, and many new registrations were also given. And now with the PAN link and Aadhaar base, now people are able to get themselves registered with the system. And registration is very, very important. Registered cannot be foregone. No, question is, who are the people under Section 24 of the CGST Act who are compulsorily required to get themselves registered? I would quote here: persons making any interstate supply, casual taxable persons making taxable supplies, persons required to pay tax under reverse charge. As you all must be knowing that they are, at least I can give you two examples straight away. One is goods transport agency, another is legal consultancy, where instead of charging this thing from the transport agency or from the legal consultant, in a reverse charge manner, the GST is to be paid with the person who has availed of this service. Earlier, they were supposed to pay, other person is supposed to collect and then pay. Now this is a reverse charge. So those persons who are required to pay tax and reverse charge, they are compulsorily required to be registered under this system. Then persons paying tax under Section 9(5) of CGST, non-resident taxable persons making taxable supply, persons who are required to deduct tax under, that is tax at source, under Section 51, whether or not separately registered under the CGST Act, and persons who make taxable supply of goods or services or both on behalf of other taxable persons, whether as an agent or otherwise. Apart from that, there are few other categories also, and why I'm quoting, even though Madam Payal Kataria, I can later on explain, but I find, for me, even in the GST vision, registration of an entity under the CGST is very, very important. How we are going to calculate the tax. And similarly, a person who is getting certain benefits, he will not be able to avail of the refund or IGST refund unless the person is getting registered. So that setup will not be possible properly. So compulsory registration has to be there. Then we have input service distributor, whether or not separately registered under CGST. Persons who supply goods or services of both, whether other than supplies specified in Section 9(5) through such electronic commerce operator who is required to collect tax at source under Section 52. And nowadays, you know that electronic commerce has also become so important, and our taxation regime has also taken care of this aspect and accorded them the importance which they deserve. Every electronic commerce operator, every person supplying online information and database access or retrieval services from a place outside India. See, it's very important. Sometimes we access the database of the people who are in the foreign locations. In such a case, even though they're outside India, but they are also supposed to get registered, and other than a registered person. So I'll repeat again: every person supplying online information and database access or retrieval services from a place outside India to a person in India, other than a registered person, and such other person or class of persons as may be notified by the government on the recommendation of the GST Council. So these are the people who are compulsorily required to be registered. And as regards the limit I've just mentioned earlier, I felt, for me, this GST vision, this is an important aspect on which I should inform the audience. Now, coming to the challenges of the GST. Now, in my experience as a customs officer, in fact, to tell you briefly that before my promotion as the Commissioner of GST Audit Meerut, I was working as Additional Commissioner in the ICD Tughlakabad in Delhi, and where I was handling imports and later on also exports. And then when GST, in the wake of GST, when GST came into picture, I was posted there. And initially, when exports were taking place, people thought that they were not supposed to check their value because drawback rates had come down and other benefits people are getting from the DGST. And apart from that, IGST refund was there, and we all felt in the customs policy formation as well as the field formation, we felt that since the chain is there, so okay, everybody must be declaring the correct value, and ultimately goods are coming, and each and everyone in such a transparent supply chain is getting the set-offs as are required. And ultimately, at the final stage, when the export is going to take place, people will be getting IGST refund as is due to them. But our experience over a period of time showed that that was not the case. Because what happened, when you go and actually examine the goods, you will find that the goods which are entered for export are very, on occasion, quite substandard, not having the value which they have been quoted in the paper trail also. You can see the system trail also, whatever has been quoted, that is not entirely correct. So therefore, we woke up to this kind of emergency situation and we informed our excise for GST formations, who also didn't have any clue as to what was happening. But anyway, when a new reform comes, the system also evolves with over a period of time. In the process, there are certain fly-by-night operators who try to take advantage. I mean, it is their, I would say, pension that they are going to take advantage, they are going to take. But anyway, now the government has tried and we are trying to plug the loop. Now, what are things which we have seen the customs? First of all, registration of non-existent entities or entities who after registration avail of the benefits and simply disappear. Then possibility of generation of fake invoices, circular or bogus transaction to avail of and pass on inadmissible input tax credit. Availment of undue GST refunds in exports, either through fake invoices, fake suppliers, and underhand transactions. I'll just quote an example here that we have, as you all know, that banks are under obligation nowadays to report all the suspicious transactions to the customs authority. And here we found that banks came to us, and when they showed the accounts of the people, you know what are the entries? The entries were only as regards the receipt of duty drawback and IGST refund from the customs. Nothing. There were no local purchases. There were no inward remittances from the foreign locations where the goods had been exported. So this is the kind of things, these are things which the people play with. And this is what I feel it is very important, that these are the challenges of the GST which we are supposed to surmount. And even as chartered accountant, I should say that since when you are dealing with a client, you can also always think of that this kind of possibility is also there. So it is very important to check their record, their financial record, their bank statement when you certify something. Otherwise, they will let you also in trouble. So what they try to do, they manipulate the values of goods and services. And apart from that, they also resort to overall manipulation of records. So these are the challenges of GST, which I have foreseen as a customs man in the field formation. And when we informed our counterparts in the CGST wings then of the department, then they also awoke to this position, I mean, such kind of possibility. And when they went to verify the premises of these so-called exporters, they found that they were not at all existing. They had simply created an entity, kept on passing the credit on fake invoices, and just went away, withdrew the money from the bank, and simply disappeared. Anyway, these are the challenges. Now, coming to, since I work in the audit department, this is my vision that audit plays an important part, because as you know that the whole assessment now of the GST, and whether it is payment of duty, whether it is registration, whether it is availment of refunds, or even IGST refunds, everything is now system based, and the timelines have been fixed. So obviously, I'm not saying like other people, I mean, the fly-by-night operators, in their case, we have got our anti-vision wings and they have been taking care of those things. But even genuine exporters also on occasions, knowingly or unknowingly, whether they or their staff also commit mistakes. And there I feel the role of audit becomes very, very important. And audit is an important wing of the GST. We have been empowered in Section 65 and Section 71 of the CGST Act and Rule 101 of the CGST rules, whereby we have to compulsorily go for the audit of the assessees. For that, our DG audit, they have certain parameters, there are certain risk parameters that have been devised in the system. They have got certain algorithms. Based on that, they select the entities and then they pass on that these are the entities which should be audited, and these are people, and these are the risk scores against that, and this is what we are supposed to take care of. And apart from that, we in the field formation also take into consideration and reckon local factors which are important for carrying out the audit of a particular entity, so that we can plug the leakage of revenue. So what happens here, the audit officer, and I would say even as a chartered accountant, when you are there in the field, when you are giving advice to your assessee, and when you are certifying certain things, what we are doing in audit, I think chartered accountants should also take abundant precaution and care that they should see all these records. Though all of you are quite illustrious and quite knowledgeable in their own field, but I feel from my field perspective, I can give this kind of advice because this is what I've come across. So audit is basically leading to what? Detailed examination of records, returns, and other documents maintained and furnished by a registered person under GST law or any other law or rule. So to do what? For verification of correctness of turnover declared, taxes paid, refund claimed, input tax credit availed, and assessment of compliances with the provision of GST laws and rules. And what we can check as audit officer, what we can check, I think as chartered accountant, you can also check, and that is the invoicing pattern. Number one, whether the invoicing pattern is compliant with the rules 46 of CGST rules. I'll just interject here. I'm telling you because I don't have much time, but I thought I made this PPT with a lot of efforts that even if I am unable to complete this whole PPT in the allotted time, at least this will be available for posterity for all of you, and you can kindly go through because all the rules and provisions have been quoted there, which you can see. But I'm just giving you a broad outline. So compliance with Rule 46 of CGST rules and whether properly numbered invoices are there, whether a revised invoice or credit note or debit note contains prescribed information as per Rule 53, whether the export invoice bears endorsement, like it is very important in case of export, it has to bear a specific endorsement, supply meant for export on payment of integrated tax or supply meant for export under bond or letter of undertaking without payment of integrated tax. This is very, very important things because in the long run you will find that it, is very important in certain parameters, certain risks which we have to see. And whether payment voucher issued for advance payment is as per Rule 52 the CGST rules. Whether a receipt voucher issued for advance receipt is as per Rule 50. And in case of a composition dealer under Section 10 of SGST or CGST Act, whether a bill of supply has been issued, there is not supposed to make an invoice, is supposed to give a bill of supply as per in terms of Rule 49. And whether the invoice period is in triplicate in the case of supply of goods as per Rule 48. Then we come to returns. We have to see the outward supplies as per GST 1. And whether the claim under nil rated or exempted or non-GST outward supplies shown in GST 1 that is correct or not. Then the GST 1 we should compare it with the sales account maintained by the party. There is possibility of a mismatch. And then whether proper rate of tax was applied to outward supplies as shown in the GST 1. We have to identify zero rated supplies from GST 1 and compare it to the records maintained by the trader and check the total taxable supplies from GST 1 and compare the sales account maintained to identify any suppression of sale. This is also very important. And then we have to see whether returns are being filed as per the prescribed time, because in the audit, we are during our audit, we have seen people have not been filing proper returns in time. So for that also they are supposed to pay penalty as well as interest. Then we have to cross-check GST 1 and GST 3B the corresponding month. And this is very important. Input tax credit availment. Most of frauds which have taken place in the GST or in customs by various entities, which are non-existent or fake invoices, this is the input tax credit availment. And I would just like to emphasize, I'm not going to read all because I know that due to paucity of time, but I would just highlight one important thing that during our audit, even a very big company, I'm not going to name it, recently we have come across a case that we found that every year by July, they were having some average of around 10 lakhs of this in the trans one they were declaring and that they were taking. But in one particular period, we found it was running to crores. And there, when we dug deep, we came to know there was no invoice available, and the party was also stunned that they could not produce any invoice on the basis of which that credit had been claimed. And I'm telling you that we could recover almost 2.5 crores, including the GST as well as this tax credit they had availed, apart from interest as well as penalty. So this is very much important. So what kind of income tax rate, input tax credit has been availed, whether it is proper, it is on any negative list of goods, or it is in respect of, sometimes may happen, it may be in respect of any tax that has been paid pursuant to any order where any demand has been confirmed on account of any fraud, and the people will be taking the credit of that thing also. It is not at all admissible in terms of Rule 36 of the CGST rules. And then whether the calculation of reversal of tax when the input or input services are partly used for the purposes of business and partly for other purposes, was done properly or not under Rule 42. And similarly, calculation for reversal of tax, when the capital goods are partly used for purpose of business and partly for other purposes. See, it's so important. But what they try to do, they will take the whole credit, which is not at all admissible. And all these things we came across in our audit. That is my experience. Then there are certain other things on which it is also possible that under Income Tax Act also they will be declaring something and which is not allowed under CGST. There are a few other things on which I am not going to delve deep because of the lack of time, but I think it will be very beneficial for you if you go through the whole thing. Then Trans 1, that is also very important. This is a transitional arrangement which was there before GST came into picture, and then Trans 1 facility was allowed. Under that, people have taken certain credits, but we have to see the credits which have been taken by them, are they proper or not? Anyway, these are very simple. And whether ITC has been availed on capital goods as per the existing provision of state VAT tax, or whether inputs of semi-finished goods, capital goods have been returned back to the principal place of business, which was sent to job worker. What has been done in that case? And proper availment of credit on transactions where taxpayers has not submitted statutory forms under CGST Act, or whether ITC has been taken after filing GST transfer. Is that proper or not? Then I understand that recently somebody had taken a class, one of my peers or maybe my senior had taken a class on valuation. I'll not be going deep into that thing. I think that you can just read it on the PPT. These are regarding valuation, but the valuation is easier to read, and I think you can all see this thing. And then place of supply. There's a last piece which is very important, that in respect of interstate supplies and imports, we have to check whether place of supply of goods has been properly determined in terms of section 10 and 11 of the IGST Act, and GST has been paid accordingly. And we check whether place of supply of services has been properly determined in terms of section 12 and 13 of the IGST Act, and GST also has been paid accordingly. So these are also important aspects which should be taken care of and on which parties also should be suitably advised. Then there are certain other checks like taxable turnover vis-a-vis the turnover as per the financial accounts, ratio between net purchases vis-a-vis net sales, value of closing stock vis-a-vis ITC balance, value addition percentage vis-a-vis cash payment of GST to total liability, and any other restraint in the name of family. We have to see it is merely on the paper or is he actually there. And turnover before GST introduction to check suppression of value, which I mentioned you earlier also in Trans 1. It's all very important. What was the turnover before GST and whether it is showing serious, tremendous jump after the introduction GST. Why is that? So these are the important checks which department also goes for during the audit, and which I feel as chartered accountant also should see while assessing the records of the assessees. So I think in a short span, even though my speed must have been very fast, and I don't know whether I was fully audible or I could be discerned, but I hope, although all the issues could not be discussed in detail due to paucity of time, yet this PPT would be of immense help to the participants, and all the very best for all your endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Sarji. Sir, it was a great deliberation, and sir, you have thrown light on what the various stakeholders should consider. Means like the dealer, what they should do, and what the chartered accountant should do at the time of audit, and what they should suggest to their clients, and that what the departments may check at the time of doing the business transactions, and they should not get into fraudulent transactions also, sir. We are very much thankful to you that on this Saturday evening that you have spared time. और सर दिल्ली में तो काफी ठंड पड़ रही होगी तो
नहीं अभी शुरुआत नहीं हुई. I am wearing jacket only as it is a formal occasion, otherwise I would not have worn.
Okay, to start. Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. It was a very brief, but it was very insightful and it was very thought-provoking. Thank you very much for coming, sir. And now I request CS Payal ji to start her deliberation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Shri Avinash Pushkarna ji, Commissioner CGST and Custom. He provided us with a very useful and valuable insights. We are very much thankful to sir for accepting the invitation. And secondly, I'm thankful to CA Amish ji, convener of Andheri Mumbai Study Circle, and co-convener CA Deepak ji for inviting me for this session. And I'm thankful to CA Amish ji, like he's taking so many good initiatives actually in the Mumbai, and in fact he is inviting the pan-India level speakers at this platform. And this is very good initiative by him, that he's thinking very sincerely about the profession, and even since morning he's sending me so many queries, which I think the members of Mumbai, they are showering on Amish ji, and he's showering all these queries since morning to me, that I have to cover all these things. So from this point, I have seen that how sincere your convener is, that since morning he is organizing this webinar, and he is collecting all the queries so that not even a single query should be left unanswered. So I have put my all efforts in covering all those queries. And I'm also thankful to all the participants and to all the brothers and sisters of this profession for participating in this. Now let me share my screen with all of you. Hope my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible. It is visible.
Yeah. So today again we are revisiting GST registration after the 3 years or the completion of 3 years. I think the GST is evolving every year and new things are coming up. And the reason behind, again, we are revisiting the registration aspect. Reason was that in the year 2020, so many changes they were taken up with respect to the GST registration. Okay, let me begin with this data. This is my one of the favorite data, which was issued by the GST on the completion of the 3 years of GST. And as per this data, as on today, there are 1,23,11,104 GST registered persons. So why this data is important for all of us? Reason because I feel that like we are 130 crore Indian citizens living in this country, and just imagine that in GST there are only and only 1 crore 23 lakh people who are registered as on 30th of June 2020. So I think we should ponder on this data, and just for increasing the GDP and for the growth of the country, I think this tax base must be increased. Now again, interesting data. It is about the number of registered person in the various locations. So if I talk about the Maharashtra, so as on 30th of June 2020, the people who are registered in Maharashtra, these are approximately 15,55,830. Now why this data is important and why I'm sharing this data with my brothers and sisters of Mumbai chapter. Reason being, you have to now evaluate that how many members together with all the professional bodies there are in the Maharashtra, because they have to serve this number of people, this number of registered person in the Maharashtra. So now you can see that how much workload or the responsibility is actually on all the professional bodies to take care of these number of the registered person in our country. Now, very interesting and my favorite data. This is my very favorite data. Reason being, this is telling a very amazing picture about our country. Now, this data is saying that out of this total 1 crore 23 lakh people, 80% they are actually the proprietors. And just imagine these proprietors, they are just contributing only the 13% of the total revenue generated through the GST. And now just imagine in our country, only 0.6% registered persons, they are covered under the public limited companies. And just imagine the contribution by them, that is the 35%. And 5% registered persons, they are the private limited, and their contribution is 27%. Now you can just imagine this total 6% of the registered persons, they are approximately contributing this 62% or 63% of the total revenue generated from the GST. And this 10%, they are the partnership concern, and they are generating the 9% of the GST revenue. Now, you must have heard the saying by Mahatma Gandhi that India lives in villages. And after seeing this data, I feel that Indian industry lives in the proprietors. Because you can see that the number of persons who are engaged in the business, they are basically the proprietors. Now, this data is very important for us. Reason being, we must know that as a professionals, that to whom we are going to serve. We know about these people. That's why this data is very important for us. And this again, another data for the last financial year. And as per the last financial year, now just imagine these registered person, 22.73 people, they were actually filing the nil returns. Now you can just imagine who are into the business and they are just filing the nil returns, and the main chunk of the revenue is just coming from these 6% of people. That's why government is also making the policies considering this line, like the people below the 5 crores and the registered persons above the 5 crores. That's why they have planned it in that way. So as I told you that these proprietors, they are very important. We as a professional have to take care of these proprietors, and we have to understand their mindset up, their working, so that we can guide them properly. As this, he is the sole proprietor, he has to take care of so many things. Now let's see that if somebody is coming to us for the registration, GST registration, which is the first step to enter into the GST ocean, then what type of basic difficulties these proprietors face? So one of the most common difficulties these proprietors face, or we as a professional face when we deal with them and we ask them regarding the provide us the documents. And what most critical documents which we struggle to get from that is the principal place of supply documents. And sometimes we face the difficulty because as like the commercial properties, they are very expensive, and sometimes these sole proprietors who actually they are the newborn sole proprietors in our country these days. Reason being, many people they lost their jobs due to the COVID and due to the situation in the economy right now. And now the newborn proprietors, they are coming into picture. And sometimes they say that they don't have any commercial address and they want to start their business from home actually. And even due to the COVID, now the facility of working from home is also available. And in the past, you must have seen that if you are giving a residential addresses, and sometimes in certain jurisdictions, certain objections, they were also raised. So now you have to see that what type of business a person is doing. Of course, if somebody is doing, because as you know that there are so many states and there are so many districts in which they are popular for their particular products. For example, if I say Kanpur is famous for its leather industry, Ambala is famous for its scientific industry. So there are certain, like the Noida is popular for the export industry, for the garments, etc. So it means you have to understand the particular industry of that zone. And there is a facility that if you are working from your own residence and they have their separate actually the meter, like the commercial meters, electricity meters, which they install particularly to do business from their home. So these type of facilities or these type of documents, we must encourage our clients so that they can provide us with the accurate documents, and their struggle should be stopped. Then as a professional, I would like to give one message here that being a professional, one conscious caution we must all follow. while applying for the GST registration for our clients. The caution is that we should never ever give the email ID and the mobile of our own. So the email ID which you are giving at the time of your part A for getting the GST registration and the mobile numbers, the both should belong to your clients. It should never ever belong to you. Reason being, in one of the recent case, it was the case of the Panipat Haryana court verdict. So in this, the court said that as the professional, he gave his mobile number and the email ID for part A of the GST registration. Now this client was not able to file all the returns. GST registration was cancelled in this particular scenario. Then a professional was not cooperating to provide the GST registration, this mobile number and the email ID, or he was not cooperating. So due to this reason, now the court said that it is the responsibility of the professional that for all the taxes, for all the interest, for all the late fees which is involved in this particular matter is to be borne by the that professional who has taken a GST registration for the clients. So even if you see even the various jurisprudence with respect to the incorporation of the even the private limited company, because if at the time of even incorporating a private limited company, if any professionals who is incorporating the company, he is exceeding his powers, then as per the various jurisprudence, this professional will be considered as the promoter of the company. It means he will have all the obligation as the promoter. Similar thing applicable in the GST law as well, that if you are giving your email ID and the mobile numbers, then you will be considered as an applicant. Why I am saying so? Like, I want to support my my content with this rule number 8 of CGST rule. Now, this rule specifically mentioned that who is the applicant. Now they are saying that the applicant will declare his PAN, mobile, email, state, or the union territory in a part A. So it is clearly mentioned in the rule that this whole information should belong to the applicant. Now just imagine, will you give your PAN number for the client's registration? No, you will not give. Similarly, if you are not giving the PAN number of your own, then why the mobile number and the emails of the professional? No, this is not allowed even as per the law. So this caution we have to follow. Okay, actually in the beginning, maybe due to unawareness and maybe due to hurriedness, many professionals, they gave actually their own mobile numbers and the email IDs. So, okay, the things has already been happened. No worries. There is a certain facility which is now available through CBIC press release dated 14th of June 2018, because government also realized that, okay, this is the problem which many taxpayers they are facing. So that's why they provide this facility that, okay, if you want to change the email ID and the mobile numbers, this procedure is mentioned as per this CBIC press release. Let me tell you how practically you can handle such type of things. So first, I would suggest that any professional, he came to know that that maybe due to mistake he or she has given his or her own mobile number and email ID, you must initiate at suo motu that, okay, you contact your taxpayers that please change this, because this facility can be changed through the online procedure. But if some client is coming to you and your client is unable to actually trace that professional, because many times many accountants actually took the GST number for these clients, and now they are actually unable to trace these people who has actually applied for the GST registration. Now the way is that now you have to go offline. There is not any mechanism which is available online. If both the information belong to somebody else, then the option is that you have to write an application. This should be signed by the applicant, and you have to visit the jurisdiction of that client. And of course, they ask that even the client, the applicant, should also be present at the time of visiting the jurisdictional officer. Otherwise, they do not entertain. the matter, because they want to verify the authenticity of that person. So that's why it is suggested that whenever you are taking such type of assignments, then in various jurisdiction they ask that the applicant should also visit the jurisdictional officer for the sake of the accurate authenticity of that particular person. And then the procedure is very simple. They change the email ID, and then one email comes to you. Then it facilitates you to change the email ID and the mobile number. Now, as I told you, this was the difficulty. Even now, the scrutiny matters, they are also coming up, and in most of the jurisdiction, what problem the officers they are facing? They are saying that we have sent so many scrutiny notices, but they are not reaching actually to the taxpayers. And what is the reason behind? The reason is that the email IDs and the mobile numbers actually not really belonging to the taxpayer. So that's why the communication is stuck somewhere, and this is not reaching to the right person. So these are the various problems which actually faced by the officers as well, and now they are finding out the solution to this particular problem. And of course, which the problem which is also highlighted by Avinash sir during his deliberation, that the problem of this fly-by-night operators and like the bogus billing, and many people do the bogus billing through the laptop shops, and they also do take the registration and then they fly by night operators. And sometime to stop the impersonation also, so the new concept which is launched in 2020, that is the Aadhaar eKYC. So this Aadhaar authentication is launched very recently. I know many people they are facing problem. Okay, let's see that what's the solution. So to curb this problem, uh, even in the finance bill 2019, section 25 was also changed, and for making this Aadhaar authentication as the part of the law and the rules, certain notifications they were also made, and I have put the notifications, their respective dates and notification numbers in this particular slide, and of course the respective rules they were also changed. Now I will not spend much time on section 25. I will just tell you that what section 25, how it is changed and what particular change has been incorporated here. So incorporated here is with respect to the addition of the Aadhaar authentication. Now the rules they are telling us the practical way of doing the thing. So the first rule 8 has been rule 4A of rule 8 has been added. What 4A is saying that with effect from 1st April 2020, now the Aadhaar authentication for taking the registration is now mandatory, right? This is the first change. Now the question arises, okay, I'm not having the Aadhaar. Does that mean that I need not to pay, I can't apply for the GST registration? This is not the scenario. So I think it's not the scenario that it is a mandatory to give the Aadhaar number. Only then I will get the GST registration. No, this is not the scenario. Because they have given another way out. Like if you are not having the Aadhaar, it means more hassle for you. Because if you will get the Aadhaar authentication, then you will get your work done in just the 3 working days. But if you are not giving the Aadhaar authentication, what will be the consequence? The first consequence is that the time taken for getting the GST registration will become the 60 days. Like now they have a power to resolve your matter to give you to the registration in a 60 days. And secondly, they are saying that there will be the physical verification of the principal place of supply, and that too in the presence of that person. And for example, you are taking the registration in Noida, and for example, that person is in Mumbai. Now just imagine if the person in Mumbai is not giving his Aadhaar authentication, then he has to come to the just Noida in the Uttar Pradesh just for the sake that he has to get the GST registration, because the physical verification is to be done in the presence of that person. It means the more cost, more hassle will be involved if you are not giving your Aadhaar authentication. And even they will take the officer will take the photograph Like he will visit your premises, he will ask for the alternate documents, he will verify all the things, he will take the photographs, and then he will upload these photographs. So the more hassle, most cost will be more involved, time taken will be more. So it means what you have to do, you have to do the Aadhaar authentication, then your work will be done very quickly, just in the span time of the 3 days. Now, this rule 25, certain words, certain lines, they were substituted. And what 25s, the things which were added after the amendment, I have put it that in green text. These few words they were, or these few sentences, they were added in this physical verification. So physical verification is altogether not the new thing. It was already into existence in the rules. But now what they have made an addition, that if you are not doing the Aadhaar authentication, then physical verification is mandatory, and that too in the presence of that said person. Now, one of the questions which is asked by AOCS member, which was given to me by CM Ishji, the question asked here that I have one query in GST registration. While submitting the application for GST registration, I have selected the Aadhaar authentication as yes for both the partners. Later realized that the mobile is not registered in one of the partners' Aadhaar. Now how to proceed? Now what the problem this person is facing, that he applied for someone's registration, and what has happened, he has actually came to know later on that the mobile number and the email ID which is registered in the Aadhaar actually is not matching what he has actually communicated through the GST registration. Now they are not matching. If these two information is not matching, then of course when this person is going to do the Aadhaar authentication, then there will be a mismatch, and if there will be the mismatch, then definitely you will go into that longer procedure. So he has also mentioned that now what to do, that even the GST officers, they are not aware how to proceed. Okay, let me tell you that you talk to the officer, because the things, they are very new. They are also burdened with so much work for day-to-day clearing of and all the files, etc. I think we, being a professional, should help them, and we should tell them, we should inform that this is the alternate scenario. So what is the alternate scenario? That this is the long procedure, but of course you can make it as a short thing. How you can make it as a short thing? You go and visit your jurisdictional officer. You ask that the thing being new, that you are not aware that this should match, and what, before visiting the jurisdictional officer, what you should do, you either alternate, if it is possible, then make an amendment in the Aadhaar database. Like change the mobile number. This facility is available online through the Aadhaar portal. You make the change in the mobile number and the email ID at the Aadhaar. Later on, you can do, either you can do it Aadhaar authentication, then it will accept. And if, for example, this is not possible, immediately visit your jurisdictional officer, explain the whole scenario to them, that this thing has happened, and explain them and provide them in writing that you have initiated the change in the mobile numbers and the email ID, and please initiate or process my files as soon, so that your client can continue the business, or they can start their business soon. So definitely the officers, they listen to your problem, and they will help to get the GST registration for you. So this is one of the solution from my side. Then one of the member also said there is a one query that what time limit, like any time limit to add the bank account details in the registration after certificate issue, or if any fine is also involved, because he has not done, I think, since the 6 month. So this previously, at the time of birth of this GST, at that time actually, even at the time of getting the GST registration, you are supposed to give the bank account details. But later on, the government realized that sometimes it is very difficult to give the bank account details at the time of getting the GST registration, because once you get the GST number, only then the bank help you to get the bank current accounts. Otherwise, they also ask you that why to give you. So it means that once you have a GST number, banks very quickly give you the open a current account for you. So the moment you get the current account, now government is facilitating that, okay, we will give you the GST number, and now they have made a change in the GST rule. Now for this query, you can again refer the rule number 10A. 10A is newly incorporated rule, and what 10A is saying that as per 10A, now you have to add the details of your banks within the time period of 45 days or filing of next month's GST return. So whichever is later. It means this much time is given to you for giving the bank details in your GST registration. Now, he's saying that is there any fine? Now, what is the consequence if you are not doing this? Now, the consequence is actually mentioned in Rule 21. So, what Rule 21 is talking about? It is talking about the cancellation of GST number. And specifically, it is mentioned in Rule 21 that if you are not fulfilling Rule 10A, which is talking about the bank accounts, if you are not doing that, then they have a power to cancel your GST number. So if in your case till time officer has not cancelled your GST number, I would suggest yet quickly add the bank details. Otherwise, they have a power to cancel basically your GST number, because your GST registration is not complete actually till time. So it will become a complete once you will provide the bank account details. So first complete your GST registration process. That is very important. Otherwise, they have a power to cancel your GST number itself. Now, very important thing which maybe many of the taxpayers they are unaware, and sometimes they ignore actually the post registration amendment. Once we took a registration, we feel that okay, I have a number, okay, but they miss it to make certain changes in the various GST amendments in the GST registration. Now, what type of amendments you have to take care for your clients, or even the taxpayer should himself or herself take care of such type of things? So the most important thing you have to take care, the change in the principal place of supply. Many times there is a change in the principal place of supply, but they do not inform or they do not report in the GST registration. And sometimes they have certain additional place of supply and they really ignore. Because, for example, if in one state only, if in Maharashtra you have a GST registration, if you are working, for example, in one particular zone or in particular district, and for example, if you are taking making certain additional supply from some another place, then what you have to do actually is you have to add the additional place of supply in your existing GST registration. So many people forget, and many times if there is a visit from the department, and once they find that you are actually supplying from this particular place and but you are not reporting it, then they have a power to actually cancel your GST number. In many scenarios, we have seen that the officers, they come, they visit the principal place of supply. Sometimes they are not basically doing from business from principal place of supply. And later on they say that, okay, we are not doing from here, but we have a certain additional place of supply. And sometimes they have a warehouses. They have a warehouse in certain another place. So it means if you have a warehouse, and definitely if you are making a supply from your warehouse, you have to report these type of things. Otherwise, your GST registration can be cancelled. And one most important thing which people forget, the change in the promoters of the company. Many times you have seen that, particularly in case of the private limited company or public limited company, many promoters, directors, they keep coming, keep going, and we just make a change in the MCA record, Ministry of Corporate Affairs record, we keep on making changes. But sometimes we forget to add or report these changes in the GST registration. And you know, many hassles they are faced later on. And one lesson one all must learn during after the completion of 3 years, that once you get authorized signatory for your private limited companies, always try to make minimum 2 people as an authorized signatory. Otherwise, we have seen and we have came across certain cases where people they stuck in filing of the GST returns. Reason being, one of the director they resigned from the organization. Because he resigned, now actually legally they can't use the DSC of that particular person, and sometimes they also do not cooperate to make the change in the authorized signatory. So you stuck somewhere because only one person is authorized signatory. So it means, particularly in case of your private limited and your public limited companies, at least there should be the 2%, so that you can easily make the amendments in your GST registration and you do not stuck in filing of your GST registrations. Then comes the HSN code. There is a one query from the AOCS member that in the GST registration they are asking for the 5 top HSN codes. Now the query from the member is that now the major business in the 10 codes, but later on the new HSN code being used, when to change in the registration after achieving the certain turnover. Now see, in this particular scenario, what decision you have to take at the time of the registration to report the HSN codes, the top five commodities or the products or the services of your organization or that particular business organization which is generating the highest in terms of the revenue, you can say. So that top 5 you have to communicate through the HSN code, and later on you find that the company is not actually doing the business in that particular HSN code, then you delete that HSN code and you keep on adding HSN codes which the company is doing. Why this point is very important? So it has nothing to do with the turnover. If you are talking about the turnover, that is basically the related to the reporting at the time of the invoicing. And very recently one notification, that is the notification 78 of the 2020, it was of the central tax. It was issued on 15th October 2020. Very recently they have issued this notification with respect to the reporting of the HSN code, but that too in the invoicing, but not in the registration part. And this notification will be effective from the 1st April 2021. So next year, from the beginning of the financial year, this notification will be applicable. What they are saying that if your aggregate turnover is below 5 crores, then you report only the 4 codes and if it is more than 5 crores, then you have to report 6 digits. So that is with respect to only the reporting at the time of the invoice. But the reporting at the time of the registration, now understand the objective, why they are asking you the HSN codes. Reason being, if I am, for example, a private limited company or the public limited company, MCA knows the objective for which I am incorporated, right? Even now, MCA, even the company law, they have also changed, because initially in the company's law 2013, they said that you can do only the business which is mentioned in the your main object, or only the another object you can pursue which is mentioned in the other object. But later on they also made the change that okay, you can do as many business as you can provided you mention in your other objects. But now just understand that 90% of the registered people, they are the proprietors and they are the partnership concerns, right? So the big chunk is the proprietor and the partnership. Now like the department will come to know that what type of business you are doing? So only through this actually HSN code, they came to know that what type of business, basically which major business you are doing. And I think at the time of getting the registration, each and every registered person should be aware about the HSN code. Reason being, this HSN code, they are good for the policy making and it is in the benefit of the whole country. because this filter will be beneficial for the government, and through this filter they come to know about that in which domain, in which area the main business is happening and where to make more policies. So I think from the government policy making point of view, for the country as a whole, for the benefit, I think we as a business owners or we as a professional must motivate our clients to find out the HSN code in which they are doing the business. Now, with respect to the GST registration, a new concept or the new type of GST registration was also launched in this year 2020. And this is with respect to of the GST registration by interim resolution professionals and the resolution professionals. So many people, they were facing the problem. Many court cases, they were pending or they were filed before the high courts with respect to this problem, because many companies who were covered under the insolvency and bankruptcy code, actually they were not filing the GST returns, and due to which what happened, their GST registration was cancelled. And once through one, the IBC was triggered on these particular companies. Now this is the obligation of these interim resolution professionals or the RPs under section 25 and 18 of the IBC code, that they have to comply with all the laws which are applicable to that particular company. So it means they have to comply with the GST law. They have to file the GST returns during that that time period of the CRP period. So they were actually stuck. They were not able to file the GST returns because the GST registration was already cancelled. Various courts and even the tribunal, like there was a one matter before the Chennai tribunal. They mentioned that this is not the actually this is not the mistake of the interim resolution professional, because they are unable to file the returns because the registration is already cancelled. So they are stuck, and even some companies, they are the going concern. So under that scenario, you have to check these relevant notification. In this particular slide, I have mentioned all the notification and the circulars which are applicable, where the RPs will take the GST registration for the company. But let me inform you that RP will take the registration doesn't mean that RP will give his or her PAN number for getting the GST registration. No. So because many people, they have an ambiguity that the RPs, they will give their PAN number. No, RP will give the PAN number of that corporate debtors company, and RP will only the authorized signatory. And the moment for example, RP is changed, and initially is the IRP, now the RP is another person is appointed. So at that particular time, what you will do, you will just make the change. You will continue with that registration only, and only the authorized signatory will keep on changing. And one another scenario is that if, for example, your corporate debtor is filing all the GST returns on time, it is a going concern, and the GST number is still live. In that particular scenario, the RP will not take the GST number. He will not take the registration. In that particular scenario, the RP will continue with that particular GST number of that corporate debtor, right? And just from the date of appointment of this RP, now RP has to take the GST registration for the corporate debtor within the 30 days. Because after this notification was issued on 21st March 2020, and later on the situation of COVID came into picture. And that's why with respect to the GST registration, they gave certain relaxation, and they said, okay, whosoever is appointed before the 21st March 2020, all the RPs can get the GST registration till the 30th of September 2020. So that date is now over, and that notification is notification number 39. Now, with respect to the cancellation, various case laws, they were showered on the high courts. Our GST number is cancelled, our GST number is cancelled. So these are the various case laws which I have covered through this slides. So what these case laws are saying, they are praying our GST number is cancelled, they are praying for the revocation. Now, for this revocation, after the pressure from the high courts And also, after making an analysis through the GST database, they came to know that, okay, many people are still stuck that their GST number is cancelled due to the non-filing of the GST returns since 2017. And now they offered one package, and I would say that this opportunity was given, but now bus is missed. This opportunity is over. One amnesty was offered, so I just want to inform you here that this amnesty offer was given. Like if the taxpayer was not filing the GST returns, particularly your 3B, since July 2017, they were given an amnesty. Okay, you file all the pending returns, just make the payment of rupees 500 per return. And later on, they also issued one removal of difficulty order number 1/2020, which says that till 30th September, you can get your revocation. So now the time is over. But of course, if the time is over, but later on, we must understand like who can initiate the GST registration. Now, the first thing who can do, registered person himself can do that, even the legal heir can do that, and the proper officer can also initiate the cancellation. Now let's understand like reason for the cancellation. When the self or the legal heir they apply for the GST cancellation, then they are covered under section 29(1). So what are the scenarios? For example, there is a discontinuation of business and someone opened a business but now don't want to continue the business, definitely that person can surrender. And in certain circumstances, there is an amalgamation, demerger. Then what you have to do is first you surrender that GST number and then you apply for the new. In certain circumstances, there is a change in the constitution. For example, one person is now sole proprietor. Now he wants to constitute a one private limited. Then of course he has to first of all surrender the GST number for that sole proprietorship because it's a PAN based. And later on he will apply for the new GST number for that private limited company. And sometimes you are not liable actually to take the GST registration. As sir also mentioned that now the limit is 20 lakh, 40 lakh, 20 lakh for services, 40 lakh for the goods, and that too only restricted to the like only for the intrastate transactions. So if for example, initially many people they took a registration, they were service providers and they were doing just business locally. They were providing the services business only in their own state. In that scenario, basically their turnover is below 20 lakh. Now they realize that okay, now there is no requirement. I'm just giving the services only in my own state only. Then of course they can surrender the GST number. So this is the sell for the through the legal heir. For example, in case of proprietorship, now the one of the for example, if the proprietors there is a death case, in that scenario, the legal heir can initiate the surrender of GST number. Now the most important scenario when proper officer can initiate. So if for example any taxpayer contravenes any rules, regulation, not filing the returns in case of composition for the consecutive 3 tax periods and in case of the regular taxpayer for the continuous period of 6 months, and if many times people took the GST registration voluntarily, if the person is not doing or initiating or starting the business within 6 months from the date of registration, then also the proper officer has the power. So here I would like to quote one of the case law. In that case of the High Court, now High Court say that let the 6 months to complete. If the 6 months they have not completed, because in that particular scenario, only 5 months they have been passed. Now High Court say that you proper officer is exceeding the power, which actually constitutionally also they cannot exceed. So court said that even the proper officer has to wait for the time period of the 6 months. Before that, they do not have the power to cancel the GST registration suo motu. So, whenever your client is coming to you, first of all, check whether the 6 month time in case of your regular tax period, in case of voluntary registration, and 3 consecutive tax period in case of the composition, you have to check. Then Of course, they have a power if someone has taken a registration fraudulently by misrepresentation. Very recently, one of the High Court case was there. Someone has taken a GST number on the address on some disputed property of that trust. Like there is a one family, there is a one disputed property, and there was not proper legal document, lease agreement documents. So on that document, actually, this particular person took the registration, and under that circumstances, arrest is initiated against that person, and then he prayed for the bail. And at least in this case, the High Court gave the bail to that particular person. Like, okay, you check the matter. So it means just see that if the registration is not taken seriously, even the arrest can be done. So of course, if you are initiating as a surrender of your GST number, then you have to just file the REG 16 form. And if the officer is initiating, then he will first send you the notice. Then you have to reply to that notice within the 7 days. And if you satisfy the officer and that you want to continue the business, and you also provide the relevant documents, then they adopt the proceeding. Otherwise, if you're not making the replies, then what action they will take? They will cancel. They will cancel your GST number. And the new provision of the suspension is also initiated because previously in the rules or in the act, the word suspension was missing with respect to registration. So they add this with effect from 1st February 2019. So what is the mean of suspension here? That when you apply for the surrender, first they took your registration on the suspension mode. So what is the benefit? That due to the suspension, what the benefit you will get, that you need not to file the GST registration returns now, and let us wait for the cancellation orders. Now, the most important thing which many people forget, like the post cancellation registration. If you apply for the surrender, your obligation as a taxpayer will not stop here. You have to file the final return. We will discuss the final return later on. But if you don't want to continue the business and officers, you want to cancel your GST number, first file all the pending returns and then file the final return. Only then your file will be closed peacefully. Now, the impact of cancellation of registration by proper officer. Sometimes many taxpayers feel very happy. Okay, my registration is cancelled. Department has cancelled. I don't want to continue business. It's very fine. And sometimes what practice they follow, they try to take the new GST number. I think that is the very wrong practice the people are following, and even government is working on that. And now they are trying to put up filters that if your GST number is cancelled, then if they will find that there is something very common between the new registration taken by the same person, then they will not give you the GST number. So it means one has to be very conscious with respect to this aspect. And another aspect, that actually once your GST number is cancelled, then you can't do business on that GST number. Even your recipient's input tax credit will be stuck. If you are just doing a business and you are even collecting the GST from certain person, because you are not authorized to collect the GST, and there is a certain penalties if you are collecting the GST from certain person within the 3 months you have to deposit that. So it means the penalty provisions will be triggered if you are not taking a proper action after the cancellation and after the cancellation by the department officer as well. Now, for example, one scenario is that you want to continue the business. Then, of course, then you have to apply for the revocation. Okay, if your GST number is cancelled, then after the cancellation within 30 days, you have to apply for the revocation. But in current scenario, many people basically they didn't apply for this, and that's why now they are wondering that what to do. And even there is a provision if, for example, the procedure is very simple. In fact, what you have to do, you have to log in, you have to go to the registration option, you apply for the GST number. The form is very simple. Although the form is very simple, but of course I would suggest here that you should have a proper drafting skills. You have to provide all the documents. You must be asking me that what type of document I have to serve in this particular scenario. if this is a scenario, for example, of the non-filing of returns, what security they want or what satisfaction the officer want from you that you file all the returns, pending returns, along with the interest. So that's why they ask you to sometime they ask you to give or submit certain undertakings that even if in future certain transactions they are reported or you miss certain transaction to be reported during that particular period, you will pay the tax along with the interest and all the late fee will be paid by you. So these type of the satisfaction or the undertaking, many jurisdictions they keep on asking. So once they will get satisfied, only then they will give you the revocation. Now one of the member asked one question that why officers they are taking a long time in giving the revocation. Yes, I agree that they used to take the time, and although in law it is mentioned that within 30 days they have to reply to the revocations, or they have to give either they give the revocation or they have to reject it. They have to ask the raise the clarification, etc. They have to work on it, but they are not working on it. And the second question which is asked, that is, even in law it is not specifically mentioned to file a return before the approval of revocation. So here I would say that in law it is mentioned that Rule 23, Sub-Rule 1, Proviso 1, it particularly mentions that if the matter is with respect to the non-filing of your pending returns, in that particular scenario, you can't apply for the revocation unless and until you file all the pending returns along with interest and late fee. So this is particularly, you can visit this section, this Rule 23, Sub-Rule 1, Proviso 1. So as per law, they have a power, and legally they are saying that file all the returns before the revocation. But of course, this is the concern that time taken under this procedure is long. I think the government should check this thing, and because many times if we have not filed our refunds, etc., even for delaying the 1 day, they will not listen to us. But what about this scenario? If the department is asked to reply something in 30 days, then of course they should, I think. Now for the reading purpose, for GST registration and revocation, these are the relevant section 22 to 30 and Rule 8 to 26 deal particularly with this scenario which we are discussing today. Okay. Before the final return, I also want to tell one thing that you have to report all the amendment in the GST registration, whether it's a core amendment or the non-core amendment, just within the time period of 15 days. Just imagine the time period is very less. And if it is approval based, if it is a core amendment scenario, then you have to report within 15 days. And even the officer has to make the approval within the 15 days. So for both the parties, the 15 days time limit is as per the rules. Okay, now let's come to the another scenario, that is the final return. I think this is the topic because these days you are hearing and the loud sounds or noises of return filing your annual return, your 9C, you are hearing the sounds of extension of the annual returns. But I think the sound of this filing of the final return is very dim. And many people, many taxpayers are even unaware about this final return, that what actually is the final return. And for this final return, I think we should not now miss this chance. We should not miss this bus, because the one amnesty offer is given with respect to the final return. Later on all, I will tell you what actually amnesty is given. Let's understand first what actually is the final return, under what scenario the final return is supposed to be filed. Now, what is final return? So for this particular purpose, section 45 of CGST is dealing with this. And what 45 is saying that if every registered person who is required to furnish a return under subsection 1 of 39 and whose registration has been cancelled, they have to file the final return within the 3 months in a prescribed form. So now question arises, who are not required to file the final return? So ISD, composition dealers, non-residents, TCS, TDS. These persons who are covering under this scenario, final return is not applicable on that. On rest of all the cases, the final return is applicable. So when you are supposed to file the final return, once GST registration is cancelled or you apply for the surrender, later on, just from the date of order of cancellation within the 3 months, taxpayers have an obligation to file the final return in Form GSTR 10. This is the obligation. Now question arises, what is the consequence if somebody is not doing? The imposition of late fee will be applicable, and the late fee is basically to the extent maximum of 10,000, 5,000 CGST and 5,000 SGST. So it means whatever late fee rules are applicable to rest of the scenario, same are applicable to section 45, which is related to your final returns. So it means, just imagine someone has closed the business, and if you are asking rupees 10,000 from that person, then I think they are incapable, and sometimes they are reluctant to pay the payment of even the 10,000 rupees. So it means the awareness is very important. Now the next question arises that what is actually this GSTR 10? What they are asking from us to report in GSTR 10? This GST return is exclusively the stock statement which they are asking from us. So what stock we are having in our hands, we have to report through GSTR 10, and we have to report all the raw materials and the capital goods as on the date of your date of cancellation orders. Now, let's understand the procedural or the practical aspect. So this form is purely online form. You have to visit your GST website, gst.gov.in, and then in the dashboard, you will find the services. Under the services, you will find that returns, and under the return, you will find that there is an option for the final returns. Then once you open this final return, they ask for you to update the addresses, etc. Why they are asking the updation of the address for future correspondence? Because many times what happens, you are using your business emails, etc. and now your business is closed. If you want to give your certain another personal email IDs or certain another addresses, at that time you have to give this type of information for the future correspondence. Now, what this table 8 is talking about, which is very important with respect to your final returns, as I told you, this is purely a stock statement which they are asking us. So table 8 is saying that 8A is asking for the inputs held in stock, where the client is having all the invoices available with him. In table 8B, what you will report that your semi-finished or the finished stock, provided you have the invoices available with you. In 8C, you will mention all the capital goods, plant and machinery which is held in stock. And table 8D, it is asking for all the stocks or the inputs which is mentioned in your semi-finished or in your finished goods, for which you are not having actually the invoices. If you are not having the invoice for that particular transaction, then you have to report in 8D. So this is the total thing they are asking through your table, your GSTR 10, that is your final return. Now, the role of chartered accountants in filing of the GSTR 10, they have a very important role here. Now, one question arises that is it mandatory in all the circumstances to give the chartered accountants or CMA certificate in case of the final return? So the answer to this question is that no, in all the circumstances, this is not required. Then under what circumstances is it required? So it is required in the circumstances, that is your table 8D. So where the invoices, they are not available, in that particular scenario, chartered accountant certificate will be applicable. So even the whole information, just see that the how things they are transparent. This was initially mentioned by Vinod sir also, that the system is very transparent now. The whole trail is now readily available online with the department. So it means you are reporting that this particular chartered accountant or the cost accountant, he is certifying, and even his membership number, his all details, they are actually asked, and even the certificate which is provided by the chartered accountant, that has to be uploaded in the GSTR 10. Now this is the procedure you will follow. Once you have filed your table 8, later on table 9 and 10 will open. What table 9 and 10 is talking about? They are talking about the tax payables, interest, late fee which is applicable in that particular scenario. Once you make the payment of the tax payables, interest, late fee, etc., then definitely through your DST and EBC, whatever is applicable, you will file your final return. Then ARN number will be generated, information will be given to you, and automatically the system will make the changes in your cash and credit ledgers, and now your file is available with your tax officials. Now, the valuation is very important aspect here. In case of the valuation, invoices, as I told you, that chartered accountant certificate is required when the invoices, they are not available with respect to the stocks as on that date. So how you will make a valuation? So here, whatever stock is available, you have to make the calculation on the basis of prevalent market price. And if certain capital goods and plant and machinery is available, in that particular scenario, the valuation rule will be applicable, and it should be the invoice value which is reduced by the 1/60th per month or the part thereof from the date of invoice, or the purchasing take place through the use by taking the useful life as the 5 years. So this is the valuation criteria. Now I would like to highlight that, remember, from taxpayers' point of view, invoice management is very important throughout the journey of GST registration. And just imagine, even at the closure, when they are asking for the final return, just see the importance of the invoices. If the invoices, they are not available, then the aspect of valuation on the market price will have to trigger. Then let me tell you that this return is mandatory. Don't ignore it. Otherwise, taxpayer has to pay the late fee up to the max of 10,000 rupees. And sometimes people have a myth that there is no requirement to fill the nil return in case of GSTR 10, because many are service providers, they don't have capital goods, they don't have any stock, etc. They feel that there is no requirement for us to actually give the final return. No, it is mandatory for both goods and services. Even if it is a nil, you have to file the nil return as well. Whole concept is online, nothing is offline. Just from the 3 months from the cancellation order, you have to report it, you have to file it. And one important thing you have to observe, that this GSTR 10 cannot be revised. So one must be very conscious by filing the GST 10. So what opportunity or the gift government has given with respect to this final return, that they have mentioned that if any of the taxpayer, he was unable to file the final return, and if he is filing or she is filing the final return between the 22nd September 2020 till the 31st December 2020, then they are just asking the in all 500 rupees late fee, and you can happily file your final returns. If you don't want to continue business, cancellation order is in front of you, you don't want to continue the business, or you apply for the surrender, you now don't want to continue your business, now just take the advantage of notification number 68/2020. And I think we being as a professional, it is sometime at this stage of evolution of the GST. So our job, our responsibility sometimes becomes more towards awareness as well, so that if any taxpayer is not aware about this amnesty offered by the government, now this work we have to be complete till the 31st of December 2020, so that we complete our job in this calendar year 2020, so that we welcome the year 2021 without any botheration of filing the final returns which are pending since long, so that we can make the beginning of the next year 2021 with the happiness and without the burden of filing the final returns. So with this I close my deliberation here, and this is my GST Kawada poem. And actually, I have a vision for the GST. Like this GST will bring actually the will make our country as a Sone ki chidiya. And with this expectations, I always feel that yes, certainly the GST will make a change in our country. It will definitely help the business organizations to do the business in a simple manner and without more hassles. Let's hope for the best.
Thank you, madam, for your deliberation. Madam, we had two questions in a chat box.
Sure.
One is from Vivek Sangoi. He is telling that one of our client has GST registration. It's a private limited company. Query is that a company has been taken over by a foreign company. That the director have been resigned from MCA and on GST today. Also, he is an authorized signatory as a director. Now, company want to make a changes in the GST and the authorized signatory is single. So, if we make any changes, we cannot do it.
So this the same matter I shared with you during my deliberation also, that this is the learning we have to learn, that whenever you are applying for GST registration, particularly for the private limited, always make two people as an authorized. I think in your scenario you are feeling a problem now, that person has resigned and the DSC of that particular person is not available, and that's why you are not able to actually make the changes in the authorized person itself. So this is the problem many people they are facing. And for the solution to this problem is that you have to visit the jurisdictional officer. You have to intimate him that this is the problem you are facing, and only the officer can help, because the online he's the only one actually who is authorized. And I think now the DSC of that person is not available. So that's why you can't make a changes, the respective changes. So you have to visit the jurisdictional officer. Only he can help out to come out of this.
The second question is from Rahul Shah. In case of a branch in some other state and a branch is closed, then what is the procedure of surrender of GST number?
Yeah, this is what I have explained through my deliberation, that if you want to surrender suo moto, just file the REG 16. And the moment you file the REG 16, this is a very simple form. It is available on the your login page, and you go to your login page. There is an option to cancel the GST registration. You apply for very simple form is there. You tell the reason why you want to surrender your GST number, and then of course the officer will cancel the GST number, and later on don't forget to file the final return for that particular GST number. Finally file the GSTR 10, then your obligation is over.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, before closing, there are two announcements. First is that tomorrow we had a webinar on Sunday on the valuation under different statute at 10:30 a.m. It will be taken by CA Vivek Navate, and currently we are opted for a new membership from November to March for a cost of rupees 1000. Any person can become a member for this period and attend all the webinars free of cost. Now coming to the site, CS Payal Kataria ji. So, ma'am, your deliberation was very simple and lucid manner, and you had explained each and everything. Secondly, your cooperation was too nice. Whenever I had called you, whenever the things are there, you had accepted positively and you had given a good response. And I wish if in person, if it starts, then I will definitely call you to Mumbai to our study circle in detail with some another topic. So it will be a gesture for us also. So with this learning, I close here with a hearty vote of thanks to CS Payal Kataria. Thanks for taking
Thank
the
you.
time.
Thank you.